of the European integration in national terms, like all Albanians into one political entity. And that idea provoked some concerns, both in Washington, because the US administration immediately reacted on that kind of messages, and of course for the local population, especially in Macedonia, as a shaky, divided society with this power-sharing system that doesn't work quite well. It's always a bargaining system between the two ethnic groups. It raised some concern, and especially when I mentioned previously that European integration as an issue in Macedonia has been securitized, I had in mind the societal security of identities, because there is a distrust between the two ethnic groups in terms of the honesty of the noble background of the idea of European integration when it comes to the Albanians, or their self-perception that Macedonians are the backwards because they stick stubbornly to their identity and to their name, while the Albanians are the only progressive forces who are heading for the EU and to push the Macedonian counterpart toward that direction. That's obviously not true, because on any public opinion poll in the last, I don't know how many years, vast majority of the population, regardless the ethnicity, was pro-European and pro-NATO. So there is no such basis for differentiation, but perceptions matter, as we know. So when making this, especially managing the ethnically divided society, perceptions matter, and that is something that we should deal with, and that is the elephant, really, in our own small room.
There are no Albanians in Greece.
Yeah.
They don't.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the big elephant anymore. I think it used to be, and I'm hoping it's much smaller elephant than I think it is. I think when we're talking here about joining Euro integrations, I think that unites, and I'm not saying it as a cliche, I think it truly unites in many ways, and it is that factor transcending the small, well, at least seemingly small conflicts that have been. It's also the incentive to address internal issues and in a way enlarge the pie. But at the same time, it's kind of like chicken and the egg problem, because you also want them to address, and you want to use the incentives to use the European integration as an incentive to make sure that the countries address internal issues before they really stand a chance to properly integrate. And I think this is partly the threat that, let's say, Albanians, let's say Kosovo, not Albania, but Kosovo sees in many ways, is that what if you could have Serbia in a way moving forward without really addressing that problem, or what if some countries like Macedonia and others could have moved forward without really addressing issues vis-a-vis its minorities, let's say the way the Baltics have, just because the minorities are Russian and who cares about them. And this was, in many ways, this has been seen as the major threat in the past. Unfortunately, this has not materialized. And, but in a way, going forward has really served well. Let's say Kosovo would never have done many of the power-sharing mechanisms that it has, was it not for the rewards and for the carrots that were really waiting, and one by one in a way. So today Kosovo, although not everything in practice, but it has the most elevated minority rights of all the Balkan countries, and in many ways more than any other European countries. I don't want to make it sound too rosy, because it's not, but at least some of that has happened, and it's come a very long way where it was. So and also the divergent, you mentioned demographics. I think the demographics is not really there. There's a very old book, because everybody's citing books, I'll have to cite one. But when they measured demographics in Kosovo, demographics among rural Albanians and rural and urban rural Albanians and rural Serbs were the same, and urban Albanians and urban Serbs were the same. The reason why Albanians had a 5 times higher birth rate is that they were 5 times more living in rural areas. So it has to do with level of development. It has to do with in a way, also offering the spoils of the state equally to all of them. And this has also been proved in many ways when it comes to Macedonia. So the birth rates are going down. Currently in Kosovo, there's almost panic in some corners that, oh, the birth rate is going so much down that we're going to disappear. And still, we still have much healthier birth rate than the rest of the Balkans, but it's going down significantly. So I think we should no longer play the demographic story as a scarecrow or as a geostrategic factor for the future. And lastly, it's very much relates to the name. There's a high dose of reluctance among the Albanian-speaking part of the Western Balkans towards what we call the Yugosphere or the former Yugoslavia, or because it's very much associated, because all these labels have bear the origin is among the Southern Slavs, as the name of Yugoslavia had, and as the way Yugosphere in a way implies, because Albanians were not Slavic. So there's nothing wrong in having the region cooperate. Quite the opposite. I think there's some reluctance among Albanians because it's seen as creating another body where they're sort of subjugated, where they're not equal to other nations. But I think the strong desire to cooperate for as long as some level, some sort of equal, some sort of neutral name or some sort of equal involvement of all is seen. But you must understand the sensitivities. In many ways, Albanians in Albania have been looking towards Italy because they were not part of the. And you can also see in the products they consume. In Kosovo, you see gorenja, which you don't see in Albania really. And Kosovars are just as happy to buy gorenja as they were in the 70s and 80s. So there's no so you see that Yugosphere happening again, first from the markets, and I think we will see it politically as well. But as long as it's done, I think after, or at least at the same time as resolving the remaining disputes. I mean, Spiros rightfully said, there's some of these Kosovo is in a limbo. So as long as for at least until we see Kosovo and Bosnia and Macedonia coming out of the limbo, and I think then we can have sort of proper and sort of more united. And frankly, I think that Kosovo and Serbia will become. The only thing that really separates them is the territorial issue. And once you have the territorial issue out of the way, I think you can see the whole Balkans moving very fast, and we'll forget we had in a way the ethnic, whatever we call ethnic. Because at the end of the heart of the conflict was this is not a primordial conflict. The conflicts we have are totally territorial. There's nothing about the habits or the cultures or the languages or the religions that really fueled the conflict in the first place. It was purely driven by territorial disputes, and once you get those out of the way, I think there's nothing really left. Yeah, that is, yeah. I'm not sure how primordial it is.
Yes, I would like to add something because just as you started talking, I was thinking, yes, the issue of Kosovo being in limbo, as I mentioned before, but I then started, visualizing a chain of issues that have to do with the Albanian population of the Balkans that is outside Albania. That's the thing. And I think that it becomes a white elephant, to use your term, only when we have an issue of Kosovo remaining in limbo, on one hand, and at the same time, I think, and I say that as an outsider, but I've been a very concerned outsider, believe it or not, I think that in Macedonia as well, the Albanian issue, if we can use the term, I think it's a bit problematic, but in any case, the issue of inter-ethnic relations is still, in my opinion, inadequately resolved. I think there is a very interesting framework, but I think that this framework is based on a consociational model that, it could be more, but what I'm trying to say is, in practice, my impression, and please correct me, I'm not the holder of absolute truth here, it's my impression, I think that it's a system that has worked as a consociational system has relied primarily on elite cooperation. I see very interesting examples, of course, exceptions to this, and I'm quite pleased to see that. Of course, my pleasure is not an issue here. I mean, I don't think that people should worry about that. But you know, I think it's positive that people cooperate in a variety of contexts, professional, social, and so on. But the big picture to me is that there is a consociational system. That means that elites cooperate, and you have a dual society. You have a society that is ethnically divided, and of course the ethnic division feeds stereotypes, that Albanians are pro-Europeans, give birth to a lot of children, possibly have a strange taste in food or whatever, I don't know. So I think this is a serious issue, and it's, and although it seems unrelated to the Kosovo limbo issue that I say, it is part of a chain of issues that need to be resolved if we don't want to see a white elephant in the room, because then I think it's going to be, you know, Albanians in the Balkans will not have the existential problems that they have now. They won't feel like minorities or non-existent communities like in Kosovo, according to some countries. Sorry.
So if there are no questions anymore, even if there are, I would invite those that want to pose them to the panel members during coffee, so that we can refresh ourselves and come back.
Half an hour.
Half an hour coffee.
Yeah. So let's reconvene at 5:20, please.
Okay.
Okay, move on.